Will Michigan have more passing yards or rushing yards this weekend versus UNLV? That's this week's question, which we'll get to here in just a little while. Michigan Wolverines will be hosting UNLV at 3:30 this coming Saturday in Ann Arbor, and they are 35.5-point favorites with the over and under being 58.5. So taking a quick look at UNLV, they did play in week 1 versus Bryant, and the final score was 44-14. UNLV took home the win. To go back to their 2022 season, to give you a little bit more context, they finished 5-7, 3-5 in conference, capping off their regular season with a win versus Nevada, and that broke a 6-game losing streak. UNLV is another team that is struggling with losing players. Not as many as ECU, but they are fortunate to have a returning quarterback in Brumfield. Now, he was not the quarterback for all their games last season. He wound up playing 8 of them with a 4-4 record. The team lost their leading rusher and their leading receivers, so they're looking to replace those positions. Their win last week against Bryant was on the back of their rushing game. Brumfield was actually their second leading rusher with 71 yards, while their running back Davis Jr. put up 79 rushing yards. They had 40 total carries for 283 yards. It was almost the exact opposite performance than what Michigan had last week, while UNLV passed 24 times with 126 yards. So this definitely will be a little bit of a different approach, as Brumfield is a mobile quarterback, so the Michigan defense will have to handle that differently this week. But I don't really think it's going to be a problem. So in comparison, Bryant might be comparable to what ECU was for Michigan as Bryant is for UNLV. There's a clear drastic difference in the level of talent and skill set for the two teams. So even though UNLV was able to have a good game last week and put up 44 points, don't expect the same performance this coming weekend. This is yet another weekend without Coach Harbaugh at the game to coach the team. And so his son, Jay Harbaugh, will be coaching the first half. And in the second half, Mike Hart will take over. That being said, I think due to the performances last week and the difficulties in the rushing game, and also Mike Hart taking over in the second half, that we can probably anticipate seeing more from the running game this week to try to iron out some of those wrinkles that came up last week. Game 1 was slow and methodical for the Wolverines, and they do like to do that most of the time rushing the ball, so expect more lightning this week. I expect that we'll see more of the same things from JJ, and that does include focusing in on Roman Wilson in the passing game. They already have really good chemistry, and it's just the beginning of the season, so I'm sure that they're going to look to build on that so that towards the end of the season, with tougher opponents, they're going to even be at a better spot than they are now. So we can talk a little bit about what we saw last week and what we anticipate to see this week, but what do we want to see happen and how do we want to see it accomplished? The main thing that I will be watching this weekend is the dominance up front. Like I said in the preview for last week, I anticipated the offensive line and defensive line to just push ECU around. We saw some of that, but not to the extent that we anticipated. So I'd really like to see them hone in on that and be more confident up front and to be able to create more against their opponent, specifically in the running game, but also for the defensive line to be able to break through into the backfield and cause havoc for UNLV. And as I said, I do expect more of the rushing game this week. That's actually what I would like to see, because it is great to have a balance between that. And we saw the great passing game last week, so we're fairly confident in that area. So you want to see the offensive line produce more and the running backs get into a more comfortable position, because Corum and Edwards, while they didn't do a bad job last week, it certainly wasn't the same level of rushing ability that you saw from them last season. So getting a little bit back more into that Michigan groove with the rushing attack. But possibly the area that I would love to see the most improvement, and it is a little bit minimal what we saw last week, is actually the kicking unit. There was a long missed field goal, but then there was a botched extra point. Now, replacing Moody is nearly impossible. That's not exactly what we're looking for. We're not looking for an identical Jake Moody. Would love it, but not going to get it. What we just don't want to see is a drop off a cliff for the Michigan kicking game. I don't think that's what we're going to see, but I would like for them to have more of an opportunity to get more comfortable so that when they are needed later on in the year, they feel more confident in what they're able to do. So even though the team might get deep in the red zone and have an opportunity to go for it on fourth down, it might be a better use of their time for the kicking team to get out there, get reps in, and get game time experience. Will Michigan have more passing yards or rushing yards against UNLV this weekend? I kind of already alluded to it, where I do believe, especially in the part where Mike Hart will be coaching part of this game, that there will be a specific emphasis on the rushing game. So I do think that there will be more explosive runs, longer running attacks for the Michigan Wolverines. And in the end, I believe that there will be more rushing yards than passing yards. I will not be super surprised if it's relatively close, though. But I do think that if you're a coaching staff and you see the performance from the first week, you want to see more of what the running capabilities are. You relatively know what they are, but game time performances are completely different than what you see during practice. So I really do believe that we will see a lot more from the running game this week, and I believe it will be more successful because I think the offensive line wants to come out and prove themselves, because they are better than what they showed last week. And they want to go out and they want to prove it to themselves, and they want to prove it to their teammates that they're getting better, that they're focused, and they're going to be able to take their team further this year. So put me down for Michigan having more rushing yards than passing yards this weekend. And that brings us to final score predictions. With Michigan having a decent performance last week, decent doesn't cut it for them. Average is not good enough for this team. So I think that they might even be more motivated and more excited than they were last week to step it up a notch, to not just prove it to themselves, but also prove it to others that they are better than they were last year. So I think they are going to step things up. That being said, though, however, even though they held East Carolina to 3 points, I think that UNLV will still be able to produce offensively and put up some points. Led by an effective, efficient J.J. McCarthy with dependable running backs in Edwards and Corum, I think it will be a steady, methodical game with a final score of Michigan 45, UNLV 10. And so again, I would love to hear what your predictions are for this game. Feel free to leave a comment. Honestly, I feel so excited for the season to start, but I think my excitement grows each week with this team just because I know that the next game is going to be just as good, if not better. And so get ready for this Saturday at 3:30. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with Peacock TV again. Catch the game on CBS. And as always, until next time, go Blue.